a lot of media coverage in Sweden about this today.
Okay, this is good to hear. Jacob, take a moment for listeners to introduce yourself. I've mentioned that we'll be discussing your book, and you can talk about other books that you've written if you have written. But the one book that I contacted you about is Rockefeller, Controlling the Game, and we'll get into that for listeners. But outside of that, I have not introduced listeners to who you are. Take a minute and introduce yourself, please.
Well, I'm a researcher. I have a PhD in Science and Technology Studies from Linköping University in Sweden. I'm also a geographer, and I have a master's degree in culture and media production. Also a musician, and I have made a couple of records as well. But and the Rockefeller book is kind of my it's not my latest book. I've written another book after the Rockefeller book, but it's not yet translated to English. The Rockefeller book is my first in English, and I have written a couple of books before that one. Especially I went into the study of power politics when as a doctoral student, when I wrote a master thesis, a doctoral thesis about the biofuel policy in the European Union. And I found out a lot of things about how politics work, and all the hidden players that are involved in power politics. And I wrote a lot about also about the climate issue, and how the climate issue had evolved, and that got me into the Rockefeller family. Which that was kind of surprising to find out that the Rockefeller family had been so involved in the climate issue. I mean, thing that they were the ones behind the oil industry in the world. So kind of surprising. And it got me to write a lot about it, and especially this book, Rockefeller Controlling the Game, which came out 2 years ago now.
Okay. Yeah. Great. So you know, of course, where I'm coming from. For listeners that are familiar with my work. I sent Jacob the link that I opened the show with, and that was the article that I wrote 4 years ago on the Zika virus. So here we are with the COVID-19 virus. But what I wanted to mention, Jacob, and I'd like to get your thoughts on that if you had something there. I want you to in that article, because you've read it now. One of my main, I had connected. See, here we are globally. We're connecting these. We're making these interesting connections that are coming to light. But I had made the Rockefeller connection to the Zika virus. They own a patent on that Zika virus.
Yeah.
And they also were the largest shareholders of Chevron Chemical Corporation. That now that Vanguard is manufacturing the pesticide that was used. It's called Naled or Dibron. There's various trade names for it that was used in to combat the Zika virus. So the Rockefeller connection was directly to the Zika. It was in plain sight there. But for listeners to understand here, what's interesting in the work that you've done, Jacob, is that I was quickly then led to a Stanford professor named Anthony Sutton. Now,
Anthony Sutton, yes, yeah, he's a very, very good researcher. One of my favorites, actually.
Yeah, and so he had given a speech in 1972 in Miami Beach, and he returned to Palo Alto. They reprimanded him for disclosing information about the Bush family banking ties to Nazi Germany. Prescott Bush was funding through Union Bank. He was funding the Nazi regime. Henry Ford was making tanks for the Nazis. There's so many elements of disgusting corruption.
And Henry Ford, he got a medal from the Nazis as well. So
right, Freedom Medal or something.
Yeah, something like that.
But what I found about your work, Jacob, and for listeners to know that when Sutton left Palo Alto, they threatened to kick him out, lose his fellowship. It was at the Stanford Hoover. Within a year of that my understanding, 1972, Miami Beach, he says, that's fine. I'm going to publish on my own. I don't need you. That he publishes with a small house called Trine Day. And towards in the mid 80s, perhaps late 80s, early 90s, I'm not sure when, maybe you would know better, he teams up with a researcher named technocracy researcher named Patrick Wood. And I think you're familiar with Patrick Wood as well.
Of course. I've written on his Technocracy News webpage. So
right. So this is
and I really appreciate Patrick Wood as well. I think he's one of the best living now, and he has really took over the heritage from Sutton, I think.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different angles we can get into. We can get into Sutton, we can get into technocracy, we can get into IBM, we can get into. But there's a lot of different avenues we can go into. Let's start with the basis there of. If you want to get into the climate change, maybe a good place to start is tying in perhaps Rockefeller. What you find most alarming. What is happening in 2021, Jacob? You're in Sweden. We have this pandemic, or as other people are referring to it, as a plandemic. It's a global reset. The objective is simply economics, getting a global economic system laid out, health being used as a proxy for that, or a means to an end for that. What's happening in your view, Jacob? What's going on in 2021?
A lot of things. I've written now a book. It came out in December. That's called The Global Coup d'etat. It's out in Swedish now, but it takes this story about all the background to this pandemic and how it started, and especially some things about the Rockefellers, of course, the Rockefeller Foundation, and all their work in the health sector, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation as well, but mainly about the World Economic Forum. Because World Economic Forum, that's where things are happening now. They have really, before they were kind of operating more in the shadows. Now they are very open with this. And this year, Klaus Schwab, that's the head of World Economic Forum, he came out with a book called Stakeholder Capitalism, where he presents his ideal model for the world that he sees, and that he and World Economic Forum wants to introduce this. They have kind of already practiced this model for a time, but now it gets more official, and this is more like when I read the book now. It came out at the same time as the Davos meeting in late January now, and it's kind of a nice way to say fascism, and of course we have this technocratic angle in it, but it's more or less the big corporations cooperating with the governments of the world. It's the and now it's with the help of the corona, this gets official, and I think it will be an interesting year now, and we have a meeting, World Economic Forum, in Singapore in August, where we'll present this more thoroughly. So I think we are heading into this new system very fast now, because at the same time they are in a hurry, because so many people are waking up and are seeing through this. And I mean, the thing I was involved in I was in Stockholm today, and observing this protests, and that's a big thing in Sweden, I can tell, because in Sweden we are often very loyal to the government and their policies and everything. So we can see this. This is they want to implement this fast, but they have to tackle this all these people that are waking up to this, and they are trying their best to of course make what does it say, control the opposition, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let me get your perspective. You were in Stockholm today, and you're obviously based in Sweden. You're in Europe.
Yeah.
Americans' perspective, and let me set the table for you a little bit, Jacob. And again, I simply want your perspective, but setting the table for you, I was in DC a number of weeks ago. Well, it's now been a couple months, and I'm speaking to a senator from Texas, and I said to him, I said, Pete, I said, you know, the United States is very powerful. They have a very powerful military. They've been very successful financially. They've got these massive corporations. Yet the government has a 26. It's now more than that. At the time, it was December, $26 trillion debt. And I asked him, I says, why does the federal government have a $26 trillion debt? And since they have a debt, who are they in debt to? And this was his response to me, Jacob. He says, you know, Ian, there's a lot of us up on the Hill that are concerned about that. That's a great question. Can you send me information? I went on and I said, do you have any idea that the Federal Reserve Bank, central bank of the United States, is not a government institution? Let me ask you this now, Jacob. Are Americans simply, there's a lot of them. There's arguably 74 million of us that voted for Donald Trump. There's 80 supposedly that voted for Biden. It's become this COVID-19 thing has become political. It's become political. I think it is all around the world. It's been political.
Yeah, of course, it's very political.
But Jacob, in regards to your view of Americans, are Americans simply sheep walking to a slaughter? Are they naive? What's your view of Americans?
I think we are both. I mean, there are a lot of naive people, and
in general.
In general, we have a lot of naive people here in Europe as well. But I also think that in America there are a lot of people that are more suspicious against the government, and I think there are more people who are suspicious in the United States than there are in especially Sweden, where we have a big trust to what the government says. I mean, America was founded on the principle of freedom from this. I mean,
Global
the
regime.
British and all the other countries in Europe that were ruled by aristocracy and kings and queens and systems that were very oppressive. I think, and a lot of people that fled from that to the states, and because of that, I think there are bigger resistance in the states.
Well, it's nice to hear, and I hope that touches a nerve for my listeners, and is more or less a call to action, because I happen to agree with you, Jacob, in that if there is going to be a strength added to this counter of the global movement, it's going to be incredibly strengthened by the actions of Americans that wake up. Now, let me ask you this now, Jacob. Your most current book is Global Coup d'etat. How close are they to being successful at that coup d'etat? And on contrast, how close is the opposition to being successful to contrasting that coup d'etat? They have accelerated, and they are accelerating. When I mean they, I'm talking about what the players that you're speaking of: Klaus Schwab, the Bank of International Settlements, Davos, that main economic engine that exists there in Switzerland is what I speak of when I say they, because all the central banks, being China, Russia, America, London, they all feed right into Switzerland. Anyway, so what are your thoughts on that?
We see this is a major battle taking place this year, and but the thing is, the more they push, I mean, this is how it always works. The more they push and how they use this very forceful methods, the harder the resistance gets. That's how it works. So if they have the police and brutality and force and everything, it will get back to them. It will never, I don't think, that will ever succeed. It hasn't ever succeeded in history. I mean, we have this regimes before that has beaten down every resistance with force, and we have gulags and everything, but it never works. They can scare people for a while, but not forever. And the thing is, I think with the internet and all the information that we have gathered now, it's much harder today to keep the truth out. And a lot of people, I would say a lot of people that are, but they go with the agenda now, but they do it because of that other people do it, but actually inside they are kind of doubting this, that this is the right thing, and they have heard all these things that we are talking about, and I think we're coming to a situation where that there are so many people that has connect the dots and understand things. So I think that this year maybe we could come to that point that we can actually get stronger than this Davos gang, because we have the truth on our side and they don't. They only have lies, and you can't lie forever. So it's going to be an interesting year. I can really feel it. So,
is in your opinion, is there? Yeah. So for listeners, I want you to go to your search engine right now, and I want you to type in technocracy.news. Jacob Nordangard, Nordangard. This was written back in June. He talks about UN Agenda 2030, Sustainable Development Goals. The title is The Elite Technocrats Behind the Global Great Reset. I want you to go to that article. I want you to read that article. Jacob, in your view, is there more at stake here? You're writing, you're publishing your writings with Patrick Wood. As we opened up, I made the link between Dr. Sutton and Patrick Wood, both great researchers. Is there, and I know Patrick is in some of his writings, he has traced back this technocratic movement starting at Hamilton Hall, at Columbia University, where IBM is really formally accepted.
Yeah.
Are we looking at something a little bit more than a digitization of global currency? Are we, because we're throwing in transhumanism, we're throwing in technocracy. Is a one world global currency simply the short-term goal? It might take 30 years, might take 10, it might take 5, depends how global people are. What's really happening in your view from this kind of engine? And I'm going to throw in another question there, but I want you to answer that. I want your thoughts on that first, and I'll throw in something else.
You have to take that question again.
Yeah, sorry, it was a little confusing. So we're looking at the Great Reset. I want listeners to go to your article, to read your work on that. We're looking at what seems to be a one world global economic currency, essentially a digitization of currency. That seems to be what's happening here with the Great Reset. But throwing in technocracy and transhumanism, is there throwing in like of course tying in with the Rockefeller Foundation? The Rockefellers have, if for listeners, if they go to the RockefellerFoundation.org, they'll find a 100-year. This was written in 2013, so just a few years ago. A 100-year forecast of how the Rockefellers want global health care to look like. These people, these elites, as you're referring to them in your article, they have a 100-year plan. They have a 50-year outlook. They're looking at centuries. So what I'm asking are your comments in regards to a global currency, a digitization of a global currency. We can throw in ID 2020. Whatever angle you want to go there, as far as vaccines, with this excuse of a pandemic, quote, flu-like pandemic, which is ridiculous. But what I want you to do is, you can talk about that, but I want you to also tie in, if you feel appropriate, transhumanism and or technocracy. Since you're, and I hope I hope I'm making sense on where I'm going with the, because it is a question.
We will see what we come with. All these things ties into what the World Economic Forum labels as the fourth industrial revolution. And I think that is very, very central, very important, because this fourth industrial revolution ties into the 17 global goals, United Nations global goals. And this is an agenda that connects to everything that has to do with human activity and also the natural environment, everything that's around us, and it's and also these thoughts about upgrading the human. Klaus Schwab wrote a book, must be 3 years ago now, or maybe it wasn't Klaus Schwab that wrote it, actually. It was the working groups of the World Economic Forum, but Klaus was labeled as the main author of it. But in this book, Shaping the Fourth Industrial Revolution, there's a chapter called Altering the Human Being. And when I first saw this, I was kind of, what? What are they talking about? Altering the human being. And when you read this, it sounds like something that the Nazis would have written in the 30s. I mean, it's so, and it's so full of hybris. It's so megalomaniac. And I mean, if you've seen this character, Klaus Schwab, I mean, he looks like a Bond villain as well. So it's total madness. And it's all about taking control of every aspect of life. I mean, patenting every seed and everything around us, and all the virus strains as well. They are. It's so mad, I would say. I mean, it's like a bad movie. It's like a Bond movie. Everything. And that's why I don't think they will ever succeed with it. But it's so crazy. I mean, it's hard to really get to grips with it because it's so outrageous. And all this transhumanist stuff. I remember reading about it. I had this. I was at the university. My first university course, and we learned about cybernetics and transhumanism. This was in '98, and I remember I thought this. I mean, they can be serious. This is just some techno cult. I thought at that time. So, but some years later, when I was researching about the European Union, I found these transhumanist thoughts in documentation. The research programs of the European Union, where we were referring to these things. Nothing that they ever talked about more public, but very special programs. I mean, I guess there are a lot of those programs in that the United States government has as well, of course. But it was so. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw that, and it got worse. And I write a lot about this in the Rockefeller book because I could trace a lot of its things to the Rockefeller foundations
So you're writing, and I want to get your comments on what's going on at CERN for listeners that are not aware. Tim Berners-Lee wrote the WWW, the World Wide Web protocol at CERN, and of course he's a British scientist. CERN being another institution based in Switzerland. It's also where the Bank of International Settlements is based. I want to get your comments if you see any parallels between what's happening at CERN and what's happening on the global or the global banking scheme that seems to be unrolling out of. Again, I'm tracing all central banks going back to the Bank of International Settlements of Switzerland. So put that aside, Jacob. You can address that, but what I want to do is I want to back up a little bit and visit the climate. You were talking about the climate change, I think it was, and the link Rockefeller, it would spawn the creation of the publication, the writing of your book.
Yeah, the thing is, that was kind of shocking for me. I was once an environmentalist, I can say. I was very into this thing with the environment, and I was also active in a political party here in Sweden, the Green Party in Sweden, and and when I started to my research as a PhD student, I was at something called the Climate Policy Center, and I mean they studied the climate policy, and one day I was supposed to write a background chapter for my doctoral thesis. It was about biofuels policy, and they wanted the European Union said we need biofuels because of climate change and energy security, and I wanted to know more about the background to the climate issue and where it came from, when did it begin, and everything. I didn't know that much about it at that time. This was in 2008, 2009, and as I was at the Climate Policy Center, I thought someone must know these things here at the center. I mean, they are researchers and experts at this stuff. So I went around and asked people, and they didn't really know anything about it. I had a colleague that know a bit about it, but he said, I only know the start of United Nations panel on climate change, IPCC, around 1988 it was. And I know a bit those things that came out of this, but I don't know anything about the prehistory, nothing. But I have this research paper here, an article published in a scientific magazine, and he gave this article to me. I think it was one or two articles. It was about how the IPCC started, and I read this paper, and suddenly I just what did I just read? It said that there was a couple of meetings before IPCC was created, and these meetings, they were sponsored by Rockefeller Brothers Fund, Rockefeller Foundation, and I think the German Marshall Fund. And I thought, what? The Rockefellers? Climate? I mean, these are the Rockefellers, they are into the oil business. They were behind Exxon, weren't they? I mean, I had researched. I had researched a lot about energy and I mean the early oil industry and everything before that, and I had read this William Engdahl as well. His very good book, Century of War, it's called. So I mean, I knew about Rockefeller's involvement, but climate, had no idea. So that made me go into this in detail, and I tracked this back to the 50s, and I found out that the Rockefeller Foundation and Rockefeller Brothers Fund had been involved in all important meetings and decisions about, first, I mean, the climate research and the scientific field with and about the human involvement in climate, anthropogenic global warming. They defined this field more or less, and then I found out that, especially through the Rockefeller Browse Fund, that they have funded first how IPCC came about. It hadn't happened without them, I can say. And then all this activism. We have this, and I found they have been involved in climate activism since the 80s, and especially after the millennium, the new millennium, and the entry of Al Gore, and I mean all these climate marches and everything, and so they were everywhere, and I was stunned. It was, what is this? And it was so sensitive to say anything about it. That was also very disturbing, because I mean, you can say Rockefeller. For people just say, oh, conspiracies. But I saw facts. They were involved in every important decision concerning climate since the 50s. And I tried to I actually published a working paper that was spread to some senior climate researchers that didn't agree with this narrative of anthropogenic global warming, and they thought this have found something important, but other people, and especially those at the university where I was working, they didn't like this. You can't talk about these connections. It's like, we don't want to see this. Don't mention the Rockefellers. Don't mention them at all. So it was hard, but very, very. It took me. I was supposed to write 5 pages about this, how climate issue evolved, and it got to be 50 when I wrote this working paper, and this later evolved, of course, to this Rockefeller book, which is like 400 pages, and goes back very long in the history, back to Standard Oil and the foundation of the Rockefeller Foundation, and all these philanthropic work that only benefits themselves. Very smart schemes, and because I really wanted to know why do these people involve themselves in these things with their own words, because that's the only way I could do it. I mean, a lot of people speculate and things, but I really wanted to know. So I started to read. I mean, now it's very easy to do research. We have the internet, and you can just download all the annual reports from Rockefeller Foundation from 1914 and to this day. Same with Rockefeller Browse Fund. So I started there and just read, search for climate in them, and so wrote this book to get their own vision, why they have done this, and what it's all about, and that took me to this fourth industrial revolution.
So why are they doing what they're doing? Is there a threat to the environment? Is it being used simply as a means to conquer another ends. What's going on there? What was the
The thing is, this started with population, the population scare. Everything started with in the 50s. We had a meeting. It was John D. Rockefeller III. He was called Mr. Population, and he started this organization called Population Council. And they discussed how can we reduce the population on Earth. That was their main goal. They started to work on a plan to do this. And on this meeting, there was a researcher called Roger Revelle. And Roger Revelle is one of the most important climate researchers. He for this anthropogenic global warming theory. He was at that meeting, and he was kind of working for the Rockefellers. He later defined this field and started this process with making this climate issue the main problem of the world. But it was always connected to population and the problem of population and how to control population. And it's very it's very obvious when you read it, because I mean that's the goals they had in Rockefeller Brothers Fund, especially. They mentioned these areas that they thought was important to do something. It was population, it was the environment, and we come to health as well, and problems that they saw were global problems, that the only option was to solve it in a global manner, and you couldn't solve it with a nation state. You had to have these intergovernmental organizations, these big organizations, and especially the United Nations. That, of course, was the Rockefellers were very involved with, and I mean they donated the land where the United Nations headquarters are in New York. So everything fits into this population and the population scare. And how to reduce population and control population. And now it's getting very obvious that this plan they had for a long time, and it's just not just the Rockefellers, of course. It's I mean, it's a billionaires club, and they are working through, especially the World Economic Forum today, to do these things. And if you go back to, we had a lot of documentation about this, and a lot of people that has talked about these plans as well. I mean, you mentioned Sutton, of course. That made a tremendous job with this to expose these things.
Yeah, so let me ask you, Jacob. I brought it up. I suggested that there could be. Is there a connection with what's happening at CERN? That's where the WWW protocol was invented by Berners-Lee. What's happening there, and is there a parallel to this global economic attempt to control the global economy? Is there a meshing there with the two?
Yeah, I mean, Switzerland is a hub for everything that has to do with financials. So of course, it all connects. I mean, it's all a part of this, and you find in, especially, I mean, you have I write about it in my new book about this power center today. I mean, we have the banks and the banking of international settlements, and we have a World Bank, we have IMF, and World Economic Forum, and how the people from these banks, they are in the World Economic Forum, in the board of World Economic Forum, and another part of this is the G20 group. That is very important as well, and all goes into financials and the financial system of the world, and how it shall evolve now, and to a new, I mean, this digitization, of course.
So, Jacob, let's take a moment here to close out, and again, I appreciate and thank you for joining the program, Discussions of Truth, and I'd like to get your closing thoughts, some closing comments for listeners. As more and more people, as you mentioned, as more and more people begin to make those connections and see what these elite foundations, bankers, as these elite players, what they're doing, as more and more people around the world wake up to this, if you will. Some closing thoughts on how best to move forward, and then why don't you please give listeners your website and where they can go. Your book's not translated yet, but where they can go to learn more about.
Yeah. I have the Rockefeller Controlling the Game is translated and can be bought in English. And I have it on my webpage, farosmedia.se. Faros with PHAROSMEDIA.se. There you can find the books I have. Most is in Swedish, of course, but I have this Rockefeller Controlling the Game. That explains the background to almost all the things that is happening now, the agenda. And as for the what we can do now, I think I mean, a lot of things are happening now. So the thing is not to fall into these false narratives. I mean, we have there's a lot of division and false information floating around, and people just take, especially those that are more awake very recently. I mean, they take every bait that comes their way, and often come to wrong conclusions and so on. So, but it's so and I know it's very hard to come to grips with finding the real truth, the real information. But and I mean, we have a lot of YouTubers and people that just they threw out this garbage all the time, and people just I think it's the truth, but it's leading them astray. But I'm very hopeful. have never been so hopeful now, because I don't know if I can give a real advice, because I feel that here in Sweden I have this last book I've written. The first edition sold in 1 month, and the second edition, half of the edition just took 1 week to sell. And it's a lot of people just waking up. So I think it's just to connect with all these people. Try to connect with each other, talk to each other.
Yeah.
That's very important. I mean, what they are trying to do is to isolate people, and try to do that we just sit home and don't speak to each other. So but I think we will see a kind of revolution with all these. I mean, the thing, I'm talking to you now from Sweden, and this last year I have a lot of new contacts in a lot of countries. So I think it's something very positive is happening in all this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's some great words of optimism and encouragement. And again, there's nothing a human being. The human being is an incredibly powerful organism, and the more of us that communicate and talk and work together, the more likely we find a productive outcome. Jacob, thank you for joining the program, and sir, I look forward to having you back on in the future.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I hope we can get on a little early then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a late evening here in Sweden, so
yes. Yeah, we'll make it earlier next time.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, talk soon. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, bye.